Many of you have enjoyed making my mixed greens over the years. Well, here's an updated video for you. I make a big batch of this at least twice a month. My family loves it and yours will too. The combination that I like is the combination of collard greens, kale, and cabbage. You can mix any kinds of greens that you like with the exception of spinach, which is too delicate for this dish. Also, cabbage is essential. Next, you'll need onions, bell pepper, red bell pepper, celery, garlic, lots of garlic, green onions, and low sodium vegetable broth. And finally, we have our seasonings. We have garlic powder, onion powder, thyme, sage, Tony Chachere's Lite Creole seasoning, smoked paprika, cayenne pepper, and red pepper flakes. And all of the measurements are in the description below. Let's get started. All right, it's time to get cooking. Remember, I use a heavy bottom pot, a nice thick bottom pot, and I get it a little hot before I get it started. And then we will start off with all of our mirepoix. Here's the onion. That's so satisfying to hear that sizzle. Bell pepper. Red bell pepper. That's specifically for color. Gives it a nice little color there. Some celery. In Louisiana cooking, that onion, bell pepper, and celery, it's a staple in most Louisiana dishes. And so these items will cook for about maybe 10 minutes. I continuously stir it around. So that'll help those onions to release its oils and gives it a little shine. Because remember, you do not have to saute an onion, in oil. It is just not necessary. It makes it so that you have a wonderful dish that you don't have to feel guilty about eating because it's cooked with absolutely no oil whatsoever. All right, it's been about 8 minutes so far, and it's starting to stick just a little at the bottom. So what I do when that happens is I put a couple of tablespoons of broth, and it loosens it right up. And the onions are almost translucent. So then we'll be ready for the next step shortly. All right, it's been sauteing for about 10 minutes. Now it's time to add the garlic. And I'm only going to saute the garlic for about a minute because we don't want the garlic to burn. That will ruin the entire dish if that happens. Stir that around. I'm going to let this go for about a minute. All right, it is time now to add the seasonings. And before I put the seasonings in, I want to put in about a cup of water, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, that's 2/3 cup, that's good for now. The amount of liquid you need for this dish just depends on how it looks as it's cooking. Once it gets dry, looks like it's dry, add more liquid. I usually end up with about 2 cups that I use all together. And so here are all the seasonings. Stir that around. Now I have to be careful with the Tony Chachere's because typically when I sprinkle it, it makes me sneeze. And so I've got to make sure not to let it pop as it as I'm putting it in the food. Then I'll go into a little fit of sneezing. I love cayenne pepper, but when it's put in front of me, it does make me sneeze a bit. Okay, so you see how that's kind of dry right there? Okay, so I'm gonna add in a couple more thirds of, yep. And keep in mind that the greens will make their own liquid too. So you don't want to overdo it with the liquid. Now, let me get the greens in here because it's ready. I'm going to start with the collards because the collards take the longest to cook. So I just put them right on top, and then I stir it around so that we can get some seasonings all over the place in there. Kind of mix it up a bit. Oops, I just splashed over there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to smother this for about 10 minutes. I'm going to put the top on it, turn it on low, put the top on it, and just let this cook for about 10 minutes, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, it's actually been about 7 minutes, so now I'm going to put the kale in. That'll be the next layer of greens. And the kale is going to cook down quite a bit. It looks like that's a lot of kale, but that is not. I usually cook a whole lot more than this, so I'm making a bit of a smaller batch. You notice I'm not stirring this around. I'm just going to let this stay on top, and then as it settles, I'll stir, and then I'll get to the next layer. So I'm going to put the top on this, keep it on low, and I will let this cook down for about 5 minutes. All right, this is what it looks like after cooking the kale for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to stir it around so that all of the seasonings can get all over the kale and the collards. Now it's time to put on my last layer of greens, which is the cabbage. Put that right on top. And I am not going to stir this. It's pretty stiff. It's already popping all over the place, and it will definitely get everywhere if I try to stir this. But just kind of level it out. And I'm going to smother that too. And when I say smother, that's a Louisiana, well, a southern style of method of cooking where we turn the fire down low and put a top on it and kind of let it, it's almost like a steam and a saute and a braise all put together. And now on top of the cabbage, I'm going to sprinkle the green onions. This is a perfect time to give the cabbage a little extra flavor too. And I'm not going to mix it around. I'm not going to stir it. I'm just going to lay it right there on top, put the top on it. And now I'm going to cook this all together for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes. It just depends on what it wants to do. So I'm going to check in on this in about 15 minutes. All right, it's been going for about 15 minutes. And I am now going to stir them all together now. It's a whole lot less than what I usually cook. But this is something we're going to eat on for the week instead of my freezing it like I usually do. Look at how that's all coming together. The cabbage is wilted just a little. It's still got to cook for probably about another 15 minutes. So this will be about a 30-minute run with the cabbage in there. Stir it all together. This is also a good time to see if you need to add a little bit more liquid. The liquid in the bottom of here is fine because it will form a little bit more too. And it also depends on how much liquid you like in your in your mixed greens when you eat it. Okay, so I'm going to put the top on this, and this is going to cook for about 15 more minutes. All right, it is ready. I like my cabbage just a little bit firm, But if you like yours cooked a little bit more, then you can cook this, you know, as long as you like. But here we have it. Mixed greens. Enjoy.